Good morning again and welcome back. My name is Becca Bolas and I'm Executive Director at Maine Public Health Association. Thank you for joining us for our next session, Pushing Ahead to New Partnerships. And we are joined by Deb Dietrich and Lisa Miller, who are retired, and that certainly deserves quotation marks around it, retired public health folks who also are from the Maine Alliance for Health and Prosperity. And I'm sure they'll tell you more about that effort in their presentation. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Deb and Lisa.
Thanks, Becca. Hopefully you folks can hear me. I'm in my school gymnasium, and sometimes there's a little extra noise. Welcome everybody to our conversation exploration of pushing ahead to new partnerships. I'd like to do a bit of a disclosure that we do not have anything to disclose with regard to commercial relationships. But I must say that with regard to what we're presenting, we're just as guilty as anyone else falling into traps that compromise our cross-sector work. So we've been there and we've done that, and that is our disclaimer. So if we can go to the objectives slide.
Lisa, it's not screen sharing. It is screen sharing, but not advancing.
All right, well, tell you what.
Try again.
I'm going to keep plowing
There we
forward.
go. There we go. Here we go. Thank you.
You folks maybe have seen the objectives for this presentation, but we're going to highlight two really seminal reports from the Commonwealth Fund and the Trust for America's Health that really outline the need for cross-sector relationships. We have a conversation about key factors that promote COVID-based, post-COVID cross-sector partnerships, and then maybe some strategies that advance cross-sector partnerships. One thing I would like to add is we had hoped to be kind of interactive, but that's really hard with this form of presentation. We'd like you, as you listen to us, think about your cross-sector partnerships and maybe an example one that has worked well or an example one that doesn't work so well. And we're going to ask you to type it up in the chat because we can't really interact with you. So hopefully you're a fast typist. So if anything jiggles your interest, go to the chat. So I'm setting the stage a little bit. We've all experienced this phenomenon called COVID, which is almost 3 years old now. And when it descended, it just really, I think, for all of us in public health, validated the issues of social determinants of health, housing, healthcare access, unemployment, food security, and equity in Maine. It all unfolded right before our eyes. And racism and income disparities emerged as drivers as well as equity. And the question for all of us is, I mean, this was a generational experience for us, unprecedented. I tell my kids, think about this. You maybe will never experience anything like this in your life again. In public health, we might not. Can we use this to move forward and build these stronger cross-sector partnerships that we always talk about and think we need to do? So we've written a little bit about this and why we started dipping our toe in the cross-sector world in an article in the Maine Policy Review. So that's what that citation is. And it's brief, so it won't take you very long, and we welcome your reading it and getting back to it if you'd like. So Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And welcome to everybody this morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of the many, many reports that were published over the course of the last couple of years. Not all related to COVID, but certainly drawing on the COVID experience and having particular implications for public health. So the first one is a publication by the Trust for America's Health, came out in 2021, and a number of recommendations, which I'm not going to read to you, but again, major initiatives that were, and excuse me, I think I just, yep, I missed the first one, which is the Commonwealth Fund report, which was published in 2022. So titled Meeting America's Public Health Challenge. A number of criticisms of public health, not organized for success, funding issues, and funding issues come across in many of these reports, as well as kind of how the public health community is organized. A big one in terms of healthcare systems, missing opportunities, and then the issue of public health having a crisis in trust. And you don't have to think too far about this to remember, mandatory masking, mandatory not masking, social distancing, vaccinations, et cetera. Lots and lots of dueling opinions about whether or not the science is right or the science is not right. A great quote from this report is around states, localities, and tribes needing to build connections between health systems and public health, and importantly, involving community partners in decision-making. And that's a theme that comes through in a number of these publications. And then the other one I wanted to highlight is one from Trust for America's Health. Again, recent publication, 2021. This one really called out issues of racism and health equity, in addition to needing to make more investments, et cetera. And again, a great quote, what America needs is a significant multi-sector effort and a change in the nation's priorities to put prevention front and center. So many, many, many of these reports are really focusing on the need for multi-sector activities. So again, just in terms of teeing up this discussion, and I think Lisa and I are thinking that some of the things that we may say this morning, again, are our opinions, and hopefully will engender some conversation, perhaps some pushing back, et cetera. But thinking about what specific kinds of things public health brings to the table in these multi-sector efforts. Obviously, we know a lot about data and science, and that has been a theme and a flag that we often carry. We also have, for many, many years, before social determinants of health hit the front page, have been talking about all the factors that comprise health, going way beyond healthcare. We have oftentimes lots of experience working in the community, working in different communities. We also bring advocacy skills and oftentimes comfort working on bigger policy issues, which is not always the case with other sectors. But there are some less positive attributes that we also bring to the table. And again, our opinion, but would love to hear responses to this. We tend to engage in our own little areas of language and jargon. We also have, in some cases, what we call a culture of elitism and a holier than thou attitude. And again, this was very evident during the pandemic, where, not just people in public health, but people who felt they were right, were criticizing and less welcoming in terms of other opinions, other behaviors, et cetera, et cetera. And let's face it, oftentimes we have discomfort working outside the public health silo. We tend to be just as disorganized, and unable to get out of our own areas of influence and knowledge, et cetera, as many others. And then sometimes we have a tendency just to go right to diagnosing and treating a problem, as opposed to seeing the bigger picture, taking the time to do a much more thorough analysis. So one of the other articles that we wanted to highlight for you today was brought to you by the people who really developed the collective impact model, which is now over 10 years old and has gone through a number of different iterations over time, but does give us, I think, a very useful backdrop for the kinds of things we're talking about today in terms of multi-sector, cross-sector efforts. And a recent publication from the Stanford Institute for Social Research on the social sector needing what they call a meta movement. And again, this is about cross-sector, large-scale, systemic change. And I just want to point out three of the points that this article makes that are really important and critical to cross-sector efforts. That we do whatever we can to mitigate the effects of dominant power structures, much easier said than done, obviously. That we recruit and lift up local leaders, grassroots, starting small, starting in community, being informed by what the community wants and community sees as a priority. And then having something they call network consciousness, which is the combined forces of organizations and people doing things that individual organizations and people simply cannot do. So this is a graphic, again, from the Stanford Institute for Social Research, just kind of comparing the various approaches. And we're not going to go into this today. I'm sure many, if not all of you, are well aware of all of these instances of collaboration. They're all good, right? None of them are bad. They all have a time and a place and a opportunity for being appropriate. But we're really talking today about the need to move toward the multi-stakeholder end of the continuum and collective impact in particular. So Lisa and I are going to tag team the remainder of these slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk about some of the enabling factors that affect cross-sector partnerships.
So we've kind of blended some personal experience along with this really great article cited at the bottom, the 12 steps towards successful cross-sector partnership. I highly recommend that, and it's quick. It's a very handy list, but partnerships will bloom, will prosper if we show up early and listen and show respect and build trust. And I think sometimes public health waits to be invited. I know as an introvert, I do, but you got to work your way in kind of early and listen. And we sometimes are not so great at that. A really good way of building partnerships is engaging in reciprocal actions. I'd like to applaud MPHA working with the Maine Council on Aging, where they were sort of two organizations that thought they ought to be working better together than they are, and so they exchanged, I think, speeches at major conferences so that people could hear each other's perspectives. Yay. That's a kind of high level way of doing it, but exchanging activities and information like that builds strong relationships. We need to define and agree upon roles and commitment. I think a lot of us have been in coalitions where there's memoranda of agreement that really kind of outline how things are arranged, and that makes things go smoother. Key point here, sharing power and resources. Haven't we all been in collaborations, coalitions where really one organization has most of the money and really doesn't push it out much? Money and resources talk, we all know that. Cross-sector collaborations really depend on good communication structures. We're fortunate now, of course, to have, internet and email and blogs and social media, I mean, it's infinitely easier than it used to be, but you got to set those up. You got to use them. You got to inform them. Sharing data is key. If we are going to collaborate together at the community level or the statewide level, defining issues and problems and solutions, sorry, my lights went. I'll get them back. We all have to bring some data to the table and share it. And then lastly, this one comes from a lot of personal experience. I've been in New England-wide collaborations and statewide and even some local ones where, yeah, it's great to do formal relationships, but the informal ones are what really cement collaboration, I think. And I was in a 20 to 25 year collaboration in New England that, you know, part of the way that held us together is we got together for a summer picnic every year and we got to know each other. The Maine Oral Health Funders do the same thing. They meet informally and they've gotten to know each other. So it's more than just formality. It is sort of establishing personal trust. So Deb, your turn. I'm going to see if I can get these lights back.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. Lisa's in a gymnasium that requires motion to keep the lights lit. And I got another disclaimer here. Even though I have sequestered my dog, she has gotten out of her sequestration and is now whimpering outside the door. So if you hear something in the background, that is not me, but my dog. So on the flip side of some of the things that Lisa mentioned, some of the factors that keep us from doing or keep us from engaging in effective cross-sector partnerships. Again, there's that issue of elitism, public health. Sometimes we think we're on the high moral ground, that we have the better option, the more ethical option, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure you can all think of instances where you have been in a situation where someone has kind of pulled that out of the hat. We also suffer, I think, from the perception that public health is government. Public health, and you know, there is this other phrase, population health. Public health is the health of the public, right? It is sometimes of government, sometimes not government, sometimes private, oftentimes private sector. But we need to clarify in certain cases where government or non-government agencies are working. Then there's the issue of non-inclusiveness. You know, for example, we used charging a registration fee to individuals who might not have the ability to pay for it, or for whom it might be a barrier participating in some activities. But again, that's just a small example of putting up barriers that do mean that participation is more challenging. Sometimes, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we get very comfortable in our silos of public health and are just reluctant to reach out. Narrow definition of mission. That means that we sometimes are plagued by the agencies that we work for, or we feel boundaries of the agencies that we work for. I know, having spent 20 years in the healthcare system, you know, I brought certain baggage to the table, or perceptions of baggage. And there was an expectation that the healthcare system would either do or not do certain things. So again, thinking more broadly than that. And then finally, sometimes we have an intense focus on some issues to the exclusion of others. And just a quick example is, you know, focusing on youth tobacco use, right? To the exclusion of aging issues or issues around chronic disease, et cetera, et cetera. So oftentimes, again, unable to kind of get beyond what our particular issue might be or area of interest. So we're going to talk a little bit about some specific cross-sector partnerships that we, both Lisa and I, have been involved with. And these labels of enduring and challenged are really just categories that we want to talk about and give you a couple of examples. So, and I'm going to start. Maine West is a group of about 15 organizations in Western Maine working on education and economic development, health, and conservation. Incredibly successful. And again, a very durable collaboration among a number of organizations. Also, Maine Won't Wait, which is Maine's, the Climate Council in Maine. Maine Won't Wait is the title of the report that the Maine Climate Council produced a year or so ago. But again, it is a collection of probably 40 individuals. I think there's 6 subcommittees. Public health has been part of that. I think Becca has been one of our representatives to the council itself and the subcommittees. And again, a very broad cross-section of sectors. And again, we think a great example of something that has been enduring and hopefully will continue to be. And Lisa, turn it over to you.
So a couple of areas I think that are still challenging that might inform us is the whole sort of economic world. And many of you remember when this governor came into her term, she really wanted to turn economic planning upside down and inside out and redefine it. And she got her department to do a Maine economic development strategy. And there were a bazillion committees with a bazillion people on them. And you had to look far and wide under rocks to see if there were any public health people, and there weren't. And again, sometimes we kind of wait to be invited, and maybe we have to kind of get in there and talk to chairs of committees or the heads of departments and say, hey, there's a perspective here that you need. And if you may recall also that the governor formed the Economic Recovery Committee because COVID, really clobbered us. And holy cow, the economic consequences of COVID were just so clear. Again, in fact, I think that committee purposefully left public health and health people off of it because the governor felt, that we were dealing with COVID in public health over here. But how do you recover an economy and not talk about health and public health? And there was one health person among those many committees, and she came from a healthcare background, but she waved the public health flag and said, we're not going to recover until public health has adequate funding. So, there are some of these larger circles we need to participate in and kind of raise a little hell if we're not. The other area I like to think about is the Maine Council on Aging years ago started up a very big effort around aging in place and developing community responses to aging and developing efforts to combat ageism. And I was a funder at the time, and I put a little funding into that. And they struggled to get public health people interested, both at the statewide and the local level. And they were doing lots of local work. So as time went on, of course, I cited that at the statewide level, MPHA and the Council on Aging did kind of collaborate together and get involved. But there are still a lot of opportunities at the community and regional level for public health to get involved and insert itself into aging efforts. And it doesn't appear to be, but many of you sitting out there listening to this might have more recent information, and I hope so. But this emerged from conversations with some of the leaders in the aging world. One thing we'd like to cite coming along in cross-sector work is a momentum around community and regional hubs. It's kind of a new term. Many of us are used to the kind of coalition work that we've all done at community levels, but now the economic world is talking about it. The other social service world is talking about hubs, and this concept of bringing many people together from many different pathways to solve problems at the community level is flowering again. By the way, if you're interested in this topic, MPHA is doing a survey asking you what you think about hubs and if you're participating in what you consider a hub. And if you go to the MPHA booth on this whole site, you can fill out the survey, and we encourage you to do so. Deb?
Right, and I'll just very quickly mention another really interesting initiative, cross-sector initiative that started just a few months ago, are the homeless hubs. There are 8 hubs across the state. This is a big initiative that is overseen by Maine Housing. There are happily lots of public healthcare people involved in these regional hub projects. And again, it's a great opportunity. There are a number of United Ways and CAP agencies that are administering this program. And if you want more information about it, I would be very happy. I'll have my email address in just a minute or so. You can contact me and I can put you in touch with the folks who are organizing those hubs. So now we
3 minutes left, Deb.
Yep. Now we're going to come back to the question that we asked people. For some reason, this is just. We're going to come back to the question we asked you about regarding the examples that you might have had in your own experience, successes or challenges in cross-sector work. So we've probably got about a minute or two for this. And if you have any suggestions or examples that you want to put in the chat, we'd love to hear them.
While folks are reflecting on that, I can share a couple comments that are in the chat. The first is a note from Lonnie that cross-sector partnerships are so important. The Maine Medical Association is currently considering a strong healthcare reform statement, which is in draft form, and they're taking feedback through October. And it needs strong public health support and can make a small difference nationally. And she links to the draft statement in the chat. And then there's a comment from Chris. This is healthy communities all over again. If the funder, who's often the government, does not have staff who can address broad community development processes, there is no support for the time needed to develop inclusive and cross-sector relationships in the process. And so just recognizing that, there's some challenges there with doing this type of work. And it's not even just the soft skills, it's also just the time and the financial support to be able to make that happen. And Renee's plussing that, people's time needs to be funded with that recognition that this system and network building approach is really important.
And I think to those comments, just quickly, those of you who are out in the audience today, we have to demand in certain cases, as Lisa mentioned, getting a little feisty, demand time, demand resources, and demand that we have all of the things that we need to create these partnerships that are sustainable over time. So I'm going to go to our next to last slide here, just I hope. And a quick plug for the Maine Alliance for Health and Prosperity. Lisa, take it away.
This is the work that Deb and I have been working on and doing since 2019. We've been gathering 25, we call them visionary leaders, thought leaders from all sorts of sectors, who when we interviewed them showed real enthusiasm for the issue of interlocking systems and how it will lift all the boats. Right now, this alliance has a three-part lens on health, economic prosperity, and equity. And we're looking at housing and this hubs issue, as well as integrating equity in everything we do. The focus right now is networking, education, and advocacy. And our kind of, I guess you would call it backbone organization is the Maine Development Foundation, which is an economic structure and a very broad thinking one. Our funders are, they are our public health, favorite public health funders of Bingham, Betterment, and Sewell. But when we know how hard this is, because when we started this work, COVID hit. And we've had a really hard time through Zoom to bring these thought leaders together, to capture their attention when they've got immense problems that they're dealing with in their own backyard. So we know this work is hard, damn hard, to be honest. And it is a work in progress.
Lisa and Deb, we're at time. If you want to wrap, oh, perfect. Good, perfect.
Right to the wire. Yeah, thank you all. And hopefully we've managed to provoke a few comments and thoughts today. Thanks for the folks, who put comments in chat. And hopefully we'll have more conversations about this as public health and non-public health folks who are trying to move that rock uphill towards successful partnerships.
I feel like that image is a perfect capture of what this work can be like. There is a question for you, but because we're at time, we're not going to have time to answer it, but I will share it with you. And if you want to share your answer back, we can distribute that to the audience. Thank you both so much for this conversation. It did stimulate some conversation in the chat, which is always fantastic. So thank you both to Lisa and Deb, and thank you to everyone who joined us. Our next session will start at 10:20. So if you want to take a quick stretch break or get some water or more coffee, we'll see you back here then. The presentation is "A Picture is Worth 1,000 Data Points, Using Data Visualization to Improve the Understanding of Data and to Tell Critical Public Health Stories." So we'll see you back here soon. Thank you.